Building and Other Construction Workers Act 1996 is one of the important act, unorganized laborers in our country or something, right? So let's get started. So why we need this actors like at 2009 itself, like we have got something around 27.1 million workers engaged in construction and building activities. Like so, they are called building and construction workers, and those are mostly vulnerable segments because most of them are unorganized laborers. The reason is that they don't belongs to this permanent employment. Their job is temporary. Even the construction project itself is temporary. Once the construction is over, they have to look into other, job, other construction works. So that's what basically it means by temporary nature. And then their work hours are uncertain. Like most of them work per hour basis or daily basis or even weekly basis or something like that. So it's pretty much an uncertain. And there is a necessary to formulate certain guidelines for them, and that's what basically means by this particular act. And if people got injured or if a permanent employee got injured, there are something like Workmen's Compensation Act and all, but these are unorganized. They don't even enroll in their muster roll or standard attendance documentation. For them, like the government has taken an initiative to collect cess from the construction industries to give some sorts of remedial measure or even a remuneration when they becomes pretty much they don't have a job or something like that, to uplift their morale or something like that, they collect cess. So we're going to look into all those things. But basically, we talk about welfare that includes safety and the conditions, the sound conditions of their working nature, and also after their work also. So this is very important. Whenever an act, if you want to know about an act, first understand when it is formulated and when it was approved, and then which it comes under which ministry, and also the coverage of this act. Like that's the three important thing that you should know. And this particular Building and Other Construction Workers Act, which is the Regulation of Employment and Condition of Service Bill, which is passed in both the Houses of Parliament. All right. So on 1st March 1996, and it's a very important thing is if you want to refer this, it is Central Law Number 27. And since we don't have Ministry of Construction in our country, all the construction activities will fall under Ministry of Labor and Employment. Right. So that's one important thing. And same way, regional building and other construction workers acts also prevalent. Like example is the Tamil Nadu Building and Other Construction Workers Act, which was framed only in 2006, 13th September. Right. So and you can check your regional places where the particular Building and Other Construction Workers Act when it was established or something like that. And then the act is covered throughout India, even in Jammu and Kashmir. Right. So some of the acts were not applicable in Jammu and Kashmir, but this particular act is whole of India. Right. That's one of the important things. Right. And whom it is generally benefited is construction and building workers. But who are construction and building workers are anybody who work in a construction related stuff in the preceding 12 months, or when a company does a particular job or construction process, if there is a 10 or if there are 10 or more people working on it, like that, then this act is applicable. Right. So this is typically the Building and Other Construction Workers Act. So before we get into the actual act, like talk about section wise. Like section 2 to 4 talks about the definition of who are building workers and what is building and other construction work. Right. So building or other construction work includes the construction process, the alteration, even repair and maintenance, or even demolition process comes under the building and other construction work. Right. It includes buildings, railways, tunnels, transmission towers. But however, anything that falls under Factories Act, like Factories Act 1948 or the Mines Act 1952, those also construction, but does not falls under this particular act. Right? Those comply under their corresponding act, like Factories Act 1948 or Mines Act 1952. And then building and other construction workers or skilled laborers, even semi-skilled or even unskilled, you know, laborers and supervisors and technical or clerical works, you know, just for hired for that particular job, even if it's a temporary in nature, if they are associated with the construction, then that particular workers are called as building and other construction workers. And chapter 2 of this act, which is section 5 to 9, talks about the responsibilities of the employers, architects, project engineers, designers, and building workers. And I've just given some of the you know, the points pertaining to this. It's a very big document, so I've just summarized that, and I've just given you the gist of idea. If you have time, you can go through the particular act. One particular example is this: the Gujarat Government Gazette, which is the labor and employment department. So they have got this particular thing, and all those things you can take a look at that, right? So what basically is to find out the standard operating procedure or practice, and it is abide by particular, you know, governmental sector, regional governmental as well as central government, right? So they should take care of every employees or workers, and then they have to be given proper, you know, um, wages and appropriate environment to work, and then they have to compensate if they have any loss or something like that, right? So those things are the responsibilities of the employers, architects, and project managers. In addition to that, like even the engineers who are responsible for the construction should always develop construction methodology such a way that it is non-hazardous. It is not hazardous for the working even, right? So they should keep in mind the human factors, right? So that's an important thing. Right? The next is the architects, projects, engineers. I told you it's the responsibility of the architects, project engineers, and designers to enhance safety and health aspects, right? So that's a very important thing, even in the planning stage of the project itself, right? And then they have to take into account about how, you know, aftermath of the construction, like what happens when the building is done, like how to, you know, take care of the debris, how to effectively, you know, landfill the debris or something like that. So that process also have to be, you know, planned ahead, like because that's also can create a non-safer environment for the workers or something. And building workers, it is also the duties of the workers to inform if there is any hazardous, you know, nature of their job to their employer or contractor, or even if they find something that was not as planned or deviates as planned, can cause detrimental to the human life or even the structure. They have to report. It's their responsibility to report to the appropriate authority at that point itself. And they cannot, you know, if there is a earth mark stating that it is hazardous or unauthorized, they cannot encroach, or they cannot, you know, trespass the area. And then they have also have certain rules and regulations, and they have to wear safety gauges, even though the employer provides or the contractor provides the safety elements. If they fail to, you know, use that while construction, it's their responsibility of the building workers. But mainly the supervisors are there to check whether they wear that, but it's also the individual responsibility, individual in the sense the building workers. And for this case, like I just taken Tamil Nadu Building and Other Construction Workers Act, like these are the different advisory committee or advisory board. If a labor or a worker feels, you know, a particular thing, they want to appeal to higher authority other than the, you know, employer and other related construction, particular construction company. All right, so they can approach the Commission of Labor, then Chief Inspector of Factories, then Chennai Metropolitan Development Authority pretty much called a CMDA, and then Commissioner Corporation of Chennai. So they can even go to any collector, district collectors, where the employment is happening, which means the construction is happening, right? And the Regional Labor Commission and something like that, right? So they can even write it to the Ministry of Labor and Employment also, right? So if somebody wants to help them and they feel something is not good or done not good for the employee or the workers, the representative can represent the case also of the situation. They can appeal to any of this, and then they'll check, they will verify that, and then they'll check, and then they'll give the report, and then if the company, uh, it's the company's fault, then they can sue or penalize. Or if it is just a minor issue, they can talk to the company to rectify that or something. Right. So in all the case, like they are the support mechanism for the labor and other construction work. Then this is about the registration. In fact, unorganized or unregistered companies will be viewed seriously, but they can be given a certificate provided they follow all the norms. These are the some of the the rates for registration, and probably this is in 1996. Now the rates might vary, but you can take a look at that. Like if a company has got only 50 or less than 50, then the registration is around 2,500, and if it exceeds 500 employees, then 50,000 rupee is a grant for certificate of registration. Right, that's a fee for registering the particular company. This is very important. In fact, before we begin this, we talk about the welfare measure. We talk about the welfare for the prime objective of this act. And section 50 to 58 is a very important thing. First is the work hour, then maintenance of record, right? So work hour is 9 hours a day and 48 hours a week is the standard, time for working. And no building workers should be, employed more than this hour. If at all, if an employee wants to work for overtime, that's a separate story. But a standard work hour is this for the standard age. And if they work overtime, generally more than 9 hours, the extra hour they work has to be given an overtime wage or overtime charges. And that will be generally twice the original salary. Say, for example, if an employee or if a construction worker gets 200 rupees a day, daily wage, right? So if he works for more than 9 hours, say for example, if he works for 16 hours, then he was given not 400 rupees, which is 200 plus 200, but instead he'll be given like 200 plus more than 200 rupees as a wage. Generally, it will be 400, right? So 200 plus 400 is 600. So that's how they will be generally given for the overtime charges. And doing overtime doesn't mean that they can take off the next day, because there are some rules and regulations they have to comply with the organization policy. So, for example, if a guy who works for probably 20 hours, right? So he if he is a daily wager or he is working in a contract basis daily, then he has to report to next day, right? So it's the how the employee adjusts himself is very important, right? And also the employer should take care, like if he works for 22 hours a day, how can he turns up the next day, whether 2 hours is sufficient for him, or probably an hour time sleep, or only an hour time he slept will be sufficient for him. So the mental conditions also has to be really looked into, right? So those things all comes under when they will look for the overtime charges and something. And special permissions from the state government is required when the women employee should work during night time. So generally companies do not insist women to work after 6 p.m. But then in case if they wanted to put them probably for a special project, uh, probably a night shift, they have to get permission from the state government or the regulatory body. Right? And then they have to be given at least a half an hour recess time or interval time if they work for continuously 5 hours duration. The human factor into picture. All those things are very much important, and that is how this act is like. Any violation in this will be viewed seriously by the agencies or the advisory committee, and they take very severe action against a particular company that violates this. And other welfares like providing drinking water, potable water should be available for the employee, and then accommodation. And generally, it is free of charges. Uh, or some companies they take it from their wage itself. But for unorganized sectors, for the menial wages, waged employees, probably most of the companies provide it for free of charges, or at least temporary living in the construction site itself. And then they have to provide basic needs like latrine and urinal accommodations, and there should be separate facilities for women only. And if a particular construction project has 50 and above female workers, and if they are married and they have kids age less than 6, they should open a crèche, like they should have a crèche facility for the children, right? So this is some of the important thing about the significant feature of this building and other construction workers act. And canteen facilities, they should provide canteen facility, food facilities, and generally it is no profit, no loss, like menu as well as the food items, right? So you have to give this facilities. And then this is another important aspects like health and safety provisions. They have to avoid excess noise or vibration during their tenure of the work time. And then there are some standards, like for example, if 8 hours were the exposed duration per day, then the decibel level of that can be 90 decibel, right? So sound level can be of 90 decibel. And if it goes less than like 6 hours and 3 hours, and the maximum exposure they can have is given here, provided the time corresponding time, like 8 hours cannot have a more decibel because it will be detrimental to the employee, right? So in that case, they can have 90, and as the time goes like half an hour or even 15 minutes, the decibel can be like 115 or something like that. And then fire protections, like fire extinguisher should be there, and adequate water supply and sand for putting out the fire should be there. Like so, those are very important things that should be available, right? An emergency access also should be provided. Like there should be an action plan, and every employee should be aware of, even though they are temporary employee, they should be aware, or there should be a person or the supervisor to guide them during emergency cases, or conducting of safety drills is all pretty important stuff, right? And then since they are unorganized, they don't form a permanent, they don't comes under permanent employee. Some companies, very good companies, like they do insurance for them also, like even though they are temporary during their particular work period, they'll be given a temporary insurance. So when they lapse, and it'll be not benefited to any of them, but in case of any emergency, it will be benefited to the employee who got injured or just like any issues happen, right? And then sometimes the health checkup of the employees also were done, even though these are welfare measures. But if an employee was not even fit to do physical tasks, and then if he is employed for constructing the masonry work, it requires, it is very arduous and like requires higher manual dexterity. So in that case, they can probably eliminate him, or they can put him in the other um, project or other processes, construction activities, which does not require some manual dexterity. All those things has to be taken care of, and every company should have a policy, and that will be reviewed by the inspectors or the advisory committee. And this is pretty much I like the most, which is the maximum weight a person can take. For adult male, he can carry 50 kilograms. In adult woman, adult man or people more than 18 years. Then adolescent male, it is not does not represent the child labor. It is 14 to 17. So the age of 14 to 17, we call them adolescent. And adolescent male can take 30 kilograms, whereas adolescent female can take 20 kilograms. Any violation of this will be viewed seriously, and most of it requires hand carry. They should have a policy, or if they have a concrete buggy kind of thing, if they want to transport, they should be given that, right? So those things also has to be looked into. But providing auxiliary equipment like the trolleys and all, it doesn't mean that they can lift more than the specified thing, right? So that's also very much important. And safety helmets and shoes should be provided. Generally, it is the duty of the organization or the construction company to give this for the unorganized workers. Then lifting appliances should be given. As I told you, it should be serviced. It should be in a working condition, right? So sometimes uh, if they hire a new equipment and it was not used for probably many, it was not used for many projects or not for a longer duration, then it needs to be calibrated or something like that. So without that, if they directly employ it, it might malfunction and can cause detrimental. And then safety measures like providing the access scaffold and then guardrails. Remember, like the guardrails we talked about when we talk about the staircase, the balusters and banisters, like that. So that has to be provided. And ramps, the slope should not be more than 1 in 4, one horizontal and 4 vertical. And then earthwork equipments has to be serviced and it should be in a good condition. And in case they use electric vibrator, that has to be earthed so as to avoid electric shock. And the demolition, this is also pretty much important thing. Um, in fact, demolition is a separate process that but not actually a construction activity. This is generally done for building that exists, or sometimes they say if they do the particular construction wrongly, then they do demolition also. Like if the contractor made a mess and the client don't like it, which is not specified in the contract, then the duty of the contractor to demolish it and reconstruct it. So it's almost pretty much a different process altogether, right? And the methods of demolition has to be specified. It could be a manual demolition or it could be mechanical demolition, which is the controlled demolition. But in case of explosives or implosion, they have to get necessary permission from not only from the competing authority, but also from the Ministry of Environment, right? So that could be hazardous to the environment, right? Excavation and tunneling work, standard operating procedure has to be followed. And very important thing is like the warning signs. Say construction company, they have got laborers from Tamil Nadu. There should be a warning sign in Tamil, right? So if the employee does not know what's written, right, how can he acts upon, right? So regional languages plus English is generally available. That is how most of the construction companies have both English and regional language. If it is in Gujarat, probably in English and Gujarati. If it is in West Bengal, it will be probably English, Hindi, and that regional language. And scaffoldings, access scaffoldings, or false work systems, there has to be given a proper anchorage. There should not be any damage or weakening of the members, or even the openings in the access scaffold. So that's all avoided. And those are not a part of a building, but used to support resources, even workers for painting or exterior plastering or something, right? So that has to be taken care. Many cases like the formwork and false work, like the scaffolding failures, are reported pretty high. The reason is that those are overlooked, and since it is a temporary structure, and they don't, you know, pay much attention in terms of the design or in terms of its construction, right? So, but it should be taken care of very seriously, like the permanent structure, even though it's a temporary. And as I told you, Cofferdam and Kayson probably would have studied it in construction technology and um, materials and technology. And this is a particular construction, probably offshore construction or even regular construction where the water table is pretty high. They have to construct a covered structure, and then they have to excavate the interior water body or interior the soil mass, and then it forms like a well foundation or something like that. So this is a separate entity, and they use compressed air to take away the earth or the water within the caisson, right? So, or drain out those things, right? So in that case, special permission or special, precautionary measures have to be taken because this is a specialized construction, right? And then water can rush in outside the caisson also, or the soil can cave in, right, during the construction. So those things has to be taken care of, and this is a very important aspect. And then safety organization. This is a very important thing. There should be a safety committee in case if there is a 500 or more. But safety committee are there in every construction companies. Their job is to create records. In fact, many engineers, all safety engineers, they wear probably green color helmet. Probably can see it in any construction site who wears blue or green. They are generally the safety engineers. Their responsibilities only look into the safety of the people and also the construction practice, right? So those people job is to maintain or check for unsafer thing and to correct that, right? So they create records and then they give training. They do safety hurdles every day before the start of their work. The safety engineers brief about the work and it's safer or how to do that in a safety way or to avoid unsafer practice or something like that, right? So those the responsible. It can be called a safety officer, safety engineer, and something like that, right? And those are the one who reports the accidents, and they are unbiased, and because of them, the compensation is given for the injured employees or something like that. So their reports are very valuable, and they are generally unbiased, and they are not even biased towards organization, right? So they should be neutral, right? So that's a very important and hallmark of a good safety engineer. And this is a cess. This is a very important thing. This cess means like government initiates some welfare measure to do that. It requires a monetary fund, so they get it from the you know construction companies in the form of a cess, right? Something like that. And it was passed in the parliament, both the House of Parliament, and a welfare scheme exclusively for construction workers on 19th August 1996, right? So this is central law number 28, right? So 27 and 28 is all Building and Other Construction Workers Act. One is the regulation of the work, and next is the welfare, right? So they generally take 2%, but not less than 1% of the total construction cost, right? So, for example, if it is a 1 crore project, they they take 2 lakh rupees or not less than 1 lakh rupee as the cess from the particular construction company, and then they use it for a welfare measure, right? So there's a board called Building and Other Construction Workers Welfare Board, right? So it will be given to that by the construction company, and that will be used for not only that particular project but also in general, right? So similarly, they collect huge money from all the construction company that can be used in a good cause, right, to the construction workers. And then if the employer or the construction company fails to pay that, then an interest will be levied, and then they have to pay with the interest. So generally, construction companies do not, you know, skip this or do not violate this, because they have to anyhow pay this with the interest fee if they don't provide it with the stipulated time. And then this is an overview of Building and Other Construction Workers Act. Let's take some of the issues, or probably the pressing issues regarding the construction workers. One thing is, like, the machines are taking over our jobs. This is the statement from the construction workers, building and other construction workers. So Nirman Mazdoor Panchayat Sangam as NMPS, it's and other unions in Tamil Nadu have had a problem against the machines, which is the ready mix concrete as well as the hook-line machines. Hook-line machines are the dozers, and for example, a bulldozer can doze off a huge volume of earth. When you compare human manual dexterity, it might take 20-25 labors to do a particular job does by the machine. But then it's a socio-economic problem, right? So Mariamal, and construction worker at Trichy, she said, like, there's no job for a woman construction worker. When laborers used to lay concrete daily, we used to get, this is around 1990, probably 1999 or 2000, early 2000. Right? They get 90 rupees a day, but because of the doses and proclaim missions, it's pretty difficult. But this is just a highly debatable thing, because huge volume of earth can be done only by machines, not by laborers. But some people, like VP Muthia of a renowned lawyer, says that, like, bigger companies, they prefer RMC because it's a faster, even though cost is higher when compared to manual labor. But then, like, it can be used for constructing faster. But then, like, for laying RMC, only four. Laying concrete with RMC, only 4 workers are required. Whereas if it is done by traditional way, it requires 30. So you can compare 4:30. Right. So this is from Socioeconomic Conditions of Construction Workers in Tamil Nadu, report submitted to ICSSR 2002 by Girija et al. Right. And they also say that there are more than 1 lakh employees, construction workers. Their job is to just do this thing, and then they are agitated against the use of this particular machines like RMC. But later they talk about this, and then they come to a conclusion that if it is a construction less than 2000 square feet and usage of machines are generally avoided, they'll be given the laborers are given a chance. But if it is more than that, probably they can have appropriate numbers of employee laborers and some quantum of machineries or something like that. And this is how it is. But it's highly debatable. It is like a socio-economic conditions. Like, by machines, we shouldn't compromise people, right? So that's very important. And one of the other important problems that we face is, like, we don't have Ministry of Construction. There's no separate ministry for construction. It comes under Ministry of Labor and Employment, right? And then migration of construction workers is also a very important thing. Most of our Indian construction workers go to Gulf countries and other countries to do construction job. Like, so we are lacking in manpower nowadays. So the quality of the construction by the skilled laborers, our own skilled laborers, we are missing out. So that's another important issue. Right. So this is the end of today's lecture.